We're working in Adobe Illustrator 2019 here. If you're using a newer version, not a problem. A lot of the features I'm going to show you are pretty much the same. We're going to be working with the pen tool today. I'm going to show you some basics, and we're going to create what you see here on the screen together using some templates that have been set up. So these templates are courtesy of a website that I found called Design Dojo. Kind of a challenge and how to use the pen tool. See if you can get pretty good at it. I went ahead and got the images and downloaded them and found these helpful little points in here. You can see these are called anchor points in the template file. Just showing you some examples of when you create things, how it'll look, how it'll end up, where to put your points. It's actually helping you along and showing you where to put the points. We're going to create points of our own. And we're also going to drag out what are called handles. So if this doesn't make sense to you now, it will certainly make sense to you by the time we get finished. So again, downloaded these template files. They are sitting on their own layer here in Adobe Illustrator. I have them set up on a layer called templates. And what I do is I normally ghost these back so that I can use them as a guide when I create my own line work. So to do that, I have all of these images locked down on artboards, and I can double click, don't double click on the name, but double click on the layer, any open space there, and it brings up my layer options. I set everything up as a template by checking the template button, the template button here, and then I dim my images to 30%. So for example, if I made this 100%, they would be full on black and white, and you would see everything in full color. These are a little bit lower resolution images that I'm using. But I like to dim it back because it allows me to follow things a little bit easier. It doesn't interfere with the work that I'm doing. So I will dial those back to 30% opacity, and I will go ahead and create another layer above called blank. Now I have several layers in here. Don't pay attention to those. I'm going to give you this file so that you can use it and practice on your own as well using the pen tool. Some of the things that I'll walk you through right now. So let's get started on this. I'm going to save my document. And I am going to select the pen tool from the tools panel over here on the left. I've undocked the tools panel and I select the pen tool. If you hover over, you'll see the tool tip. Very helpful. And down here where my fill is set, I don't want to have any fills, so I bring that swatch forward if it's not already forward. I bring that swatch forward and I set it to none. For the stroke color, I'll bring that forward and double click on it. That'll open up this color picker. And now I can select a color. I usually select maybe like a magenta or a very kind of light blue. But magenta seems to be working pretty well for me. It allows me to see the line work as I create it, and I don't get confused because I don't use magenta very often. So I got that little trick or that little tip from the logo designer Von Glitchka. He does the same. He doesn't use magenta very often in his artwork, so it helps. So I'm going to go ahead and set my line work to that. And then up here under my stroke panel, or this area at the top, this contextual menu, I can also access the stroke panel under Window. Go down, and if it's not checked, this is where you get it in the window menu. So stroke. I do have it over here docked on the right hand side of my screen. I'm going to change my stroke weight to 0.5 for this. So that's just a half point stroke weight as we're working on things. So a stroke is also called a path. It can also be called a line. We'll refer to it in all different forms here, and I'll let you know when we're working with it. You can see in the contextual menu, it's also 0.5 up here because anything I did over in this panel, the stroke panel, shows up exactly up there. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my cap to this round end cap. That's the end of the line, and I'm going to set my corner to smooth corners or a round join. as they call it here. So I think we're ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and click now and create some of these things. So I'm going to zoom in, holding down Command and my space bar. And I am working on the blank layer in the Layers panel. I'm going to redock my stroke panel here. I'm working on the blank layer. I have my pen tool selected. I have my stroke set to a 0.5 magenta stroke weight, or stroke, and I am going to click. So here's what I'm going to do. Pretty helpful here. Artboard 1. I can simply click to create these lines. So these little red dots that you see on the template artwork refer to the points. To create a line or a stroke segment, we click first to create our first point, and then we have this helpful little guide that comes up. It's kind of like a little rubber band. It shows us the direction that we will be going in, and I will click on the end there. Now you see it wants us to create another point that is now connected to this, but we don't want to do that. We want to end our stroke right here so that we can follow our artwork below. So to easily get out of this tool temporarily, we can hit our Command key. We hold down on that Command key and click anywhere on our artwork. So I'm going to turn off just temporarily my templates layer, and you can see now that we have drawn a stroke. Our first stroke made up of an anchor point here and an anchor point here at the end. So what I'm going to do is, I'm having a little difficulty seeing below. I'm actually going to thicken up this pink line. I'm going to change it by typing in 2 points so we can see what we're working on here. Okay, so we got this stroke here. Let's take a look at it. We had set up some things in our stroke panel for the end caps and the corner. For the end caps would be circular or round, and same with the corners. There would be round joins here. I'm going to zoom in on the end cap. So I am zooming in here, and you can see that the end cap for this line segment is a rounded cap. We can also change it to a butt cap, and we can even extend it slightly beyond the point that we've put in there to a projecting cap. We'll set it back to the round, and we'll leave it at that. Let's turn back on our template layer, the bottommost layer, and now I will go ahead and draw these out for you. So I'm going to click, click, Command held down, click anywhere, click, click, Command held down. You see it gives me temporary access to the direct selection tool, and I can click anywhere outside of that. Now nothing is selected. Again, I'm working on my blank layer. Let's do this. We're going to set our point here according to the guide below on that template layer, and we'll click around. And then what will we do to get out of the tool? We will hit Command temporarily, hold down that key, click with our mouse or on our trackpad, and we now have exactly what we see below. So in the next video, we will continue working. I'm going to create a couple more shapes, and then we'll get into curved things eventually. That gets a little more complex, but we can hold down certain keys that will help us along. And by the time we end this video, we will have created everything you see here, this video series, I should say. So let's get moving along and work on the next shapes. We're continuing with our work with the pen tool, using the pen tool, really grasping the basics of it. I have it selected here from my tools panel on the left-hand side of my screen. I have this tool panel floating. I can also dock that over to the left edge by dragging and waiting and letting go. So now it is now docked, this tools panel, and again I can pull it out anytime I want to use it. So we have the pen tool selected. We're going to zoom in. We have been using this pen tool. I always try to find somewhere in the artwork where there is a straight edge. Maybe we start on a hard corner and then work out from there, especially in curved artwork. So I can start really anywhere here if I want. We're going to create this little chevron. I am working on my blank layer. I have my pen tool selected. I'm going to click on that point. Click on the topmost point. Again, we're using the template layer below to kind of see those ghosted points, the anchor points. And that was pretty straightforward. Not exact, but that's okay. We're going to move along here. These are pretty simple. Now, a lot of people will struggle here. They'll try to get it directly on, perfectly straight vertically. To do that, to go either horizontal or vertical, perfectly, so that's not kind of off there like that, we hold down our Shift key. So while you're clicking, before you click to your next point, hold down your Shift key on your keyboard and then click that point. This is pretty much straight up here. We're going at a diagonal. We're going to click to where the center of that next point would be. Down here, we'll find it there. And just keep working around. It's really just it's like connecting the dots. If you ever did one of those drawings when you were younger, that's how you do it. Now, we want to adjust this point over here. You can't see all the points, but a good way to see them quickly is to just select and drag around them. And now we can see all of the points that we've created. I'm going to turn off what is called the corner widget just for now, so you don't see those little donut shapes anymore. And I am going to click on the point that I want to adjust. So I'm holding down on this point and I'm moving my mouse around. I can let go over here, reselect it. I'm using the direct selection tool, by the way, from the tools panel. I'm no longer on the pen tool for now. And I've reset it. So we're moving through this. Let's see, we got a good one right here. This is going to be fun. We're going to be working with, again, the Shift key. So I told you that the Shift key can be used to create perfectly vertical lines from top to bottom. Also horizontal from left to right or right to left, either one. If we hold down the Shift key, we get a perfectly vertical line. I'm still holding down the Shift key the whole time, by the way. I still have the Shift key held down, and it's allowing me to draw perfect horizontal and vertical. So now we get to a 45-degree angle, and if we still have the Shift key held down, you can see as we move our mouse or our trackpad or finger on our trackpad around, let's undo that, you can see that if we hold down the Shift key, it jumps by 45-degree increments. So for this particular part of the template, this is 45 degrees, so we can continue on. Still holding down the Shift key. Working my way around pretty quickly. I can see that preview line as I move my mouse. I do work with the mouse, by the way. Kind of old school like that. And I can do horizontals and verticals. All right, so here we wanted this to align perfectly with this, and it gets a little tricky. So here's where I'm going to pause for a second. I'm not going to draw anything yet. I'm going to go up to my View menu, and I'm going to go down to Smart Guides. So under the View menu, it's Command or Control U, Control if you're on a PC. We can take this line and we can put it over the point we want to align with, which would be this start point. And we see this helpful little Align 0 degrees turned on. We can move that over, and still holding down the Shift key when we get here. It's essentially giving us a guide to work with to let us know that we are aligned perfectly. We can click and then close it. So you can see as I come back around, you can see something I didn't point out before, this kind of little circle, meaning that we're going to close the stroke path here. And you can see the little Smart Guide tip here. It says anchor. It just means that we're aligned on that anchor. And there we go. I'm going to turn off Smart Guides again. I only use them sparingly. And we can see now we have the last point selected. And we've drawn that. So let's take a look. We'll turn off our template over here in the Layers panel. We'll hide that. And you can see what we've done so far. So we're making pretty good progress. In the next video, we'll start working with curves. In the last video, we covered straight shapes here, if you will. We went ahead and used our pen tool and really just followed the straight lines, either horizontal or vertical. We followed them around our template. We even got to a 45-degree area, and we were able to hold down our Shift key the whole time while creating this to keep things to either strictly horizontal or vertical or at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so with that all in mind, pretty easy stuff, clicking around, we're going to move into something a little more difficult. So let's take a look really quickly at a diagram of a curve here. We have a curve that's constructed in Adobe Illustrator made up of anchor points on either end. We can also have an anchor point in the middle and then handles that are used to draw the curve. There are a lot of different ways to do it. This one shows a center anchor point with handles that are dragged out on either side. These look to be largely symmetrical, creating this symmetrical curve. These curves are called Bezier curves after the primary inventor or user of these. Pierre Bezier worked for Renault, the car company, and utilized the use of Bezier curves in a lot of the drawings that were done for technical drawings. And so these are now called Bezier curves. So in between the points, we have a path or a stroke in between that's affected. Again, that curve is affected by these handles. They act almost as like little rubber bands, if you will. You can stretch them out and it affects that curve. So let's take a look. I'm going to turn that off and we're going to work down here, and I'll show you how we can do this. We have just 3 anchor points made up of this half circle, not a perfect circle, but half circular shape, a wedge. We'll just call it a wedge. So we're going to click on this first point. That's our start point. You can either start on this side or that side. It really doesn't matter. Starting again at a corner, something close to a corner on a straightaway can be a lot easier. And we see this helpful guide rubber band like thing coming up to the top. We're going to click on this point, but we're not going to let go of our mouse or our trackpad. We have that button held down, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drag in the direction that we're drawing. So I'm holding down the Shift key and I'm going to align these dots. They're almost like little lollipops at the ends. I am holding down that Shift key still, haven't let go, and I'm going to now let go. I'm going to get as close as possible. So we got the first part of that curve, but watch what happens. This handle over here is stretched out to affect this side, the right side of this wedge. So this one on the left is affecting the curvature of the left side of this, the left side of this anchor point, and this on the right is affecting the curve that will come down here to this lower point. So we're going to go ahead and approximate where this point should go. We'll click, and then to finish things off, we can simply move our mouse or our trackpad over to that start point. You see the little closing path symbol there, the little O or the donut, and then we can click and we have our curve established. So Let's take a look at this one more time. We're going to hold down our Command key, which gives us temporary access from the pen tool to the direct selection tool. We're going to click, and there we go. We have a nice view of the handle that stretches all the way across to make this entire curve. Again, left side of the curve controlled by this handle, right side controlled by this handle. Now suppose you wanted to adjust these handles. We can do that again by holding down our Command key, clicking on one of the handles, and bringing it in. I'm going to hold down my Shift key at the same time, which locks everything, those handles, to horizontally, the horizontal axis. And you can see I'm affecting that curve by just simply pulling closer to the anchor point or away from the anchor point. Okay, so you can go as far out as you want or as far in as you want. Typically, if you go too far, it can get a little sloppy with anchor points and handles all over your drawing. So we could talk about that later. You'll see how we can affect that and make it a little bit easier. Let's put that back, and we now have our first curve. Let's move over to this one. This one is made up of 4 separate points, and we don't really have a corner that we can start on. So let's start at the bottom here. Seems like a good place to start, or we can start at the top. It doesn't matter. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to click, but at the same time I'm going to drag. I'm going to draw counterclockwise. I'm just used to doing that, or sorry, clockwise. I'm used to doing that. So what I will do is hold down my Shift key. That'll keep everything horizontal again. That handle, it could go 45 degrees. It can go vertical or horizontal. So remember that Shift key when drawing our shapes and lines. We'll let go. It's not perfectly aligned, but that's all right. We'll come up to this one, and what do you think we'll do here? What we're going to do is hold down our Shift key again. It's going to lock it to a vertical orientation, and we will drag in the direction that we're drawing, which is up and clockwise, and then we'll continue around. So let's do the same thing. Let's align where the point's going to go. I don't have the Shift key held down yet. Just as I click, I hold down the Shift key now, and I drag out. Try to follow those little lollipop handles underneath. Here's another one. I'm going to put my mouse right over where the point should be, click, hold down my Shift key, dragging down to complete the rest of this. And then I'm going to come down here. Now this is where it gets a little bit dicey, confusing, if you will. I'll click, and you see now we only have one handle. So here's where I'm going to let you in on a little trick that you can do. You could drag this handle over here on the right and make it longer, but there's another little keyboard key that you should use here that can really help us along. So that is the Option key. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm going to drag again in the original direction I was drawing. And you can see as I'm holding down the Option key, I'm also going to hold the Shift key. So that Shift key is going to keep it strictly horizontal, holding down the Option key, and I will let go. Okay. So that Option key gives us temporary access. As you can see, I'm toggling between to the Anchor Point tool. The Anchor Point tool also lives underneath the Pen tool over here. And if you want to see any of these submenus, a lot of these tools have a little fly out button here. So if you hover over it and let go, you can undock all of the subtools for that tool. So the Pen tool in this case, we can see we can add anchor points. That means if we hover over something in between 2 anchor points, we can add another one. We could delete one, so we can hover. These tools also show up, by the way, if you just hover over them. See, we have one already established, so it assumes that we want to go and delete that. So we have everything created here, and then we have at the very end the Anchor Point tool. So again, we're in the Pen tool. If we hold down the Option key temporarily, we get access to this anchor point tool, and we can start to drag these handles individually. So I'm going to Option, now I'm going to Command to get back to the center, Option or Alt on the PC, and we can adjust these if we want to. So I'm going to leave it as is. In the next video, we'll get a little more complex. We're going to do some interesting things with this shape. We'll get into this flame, and then, of course, the Superman logo. So we're working with curved shapes here in Adobe Illustrator, and we're going to move on to some more complex things here as we finish things out. I am using the pen tool. I have the tools selected here from the tools panel over on the left hand side. This tools panel is undocked, and that means I can float it around the screen, put it where I need to. I have this pen tool selected. I am going to go down here and zoom in on this shape here, and we can look at the way this is constructed very quickly. As I stated in previous videos, it's always good to select, if you can, a corner point. It's just a lot easier to work starting from a corner and then working into a curve rather than starting with curves, especially for people who are new to Adobe Illustrator's pen tool. So we're going to go ahead and construct this, but we're going to look at it very carefully before we do. So if we're looking at this template below, we can see here that we have multiple points. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. 6 points, and we can see that each point, this anchor point here for example, has handles that are dragged out, handles that are dragged out here on this one, and so on. So to construct this, we're going to follow similarly to what we did in the last video with the curves up in here. We're going to kind of follow those same principles. We'll start down here, put a point in, and then when we reach this anchor point, we are going to hold down our Shift key and drag straight up, and you can see these little lollipop handles coming out. We're going to drag straight up, and we'll just follow those guides. We're going to have that point set, and you can see we're coming down to this next anchor point. And what do you think we're going to do here? We're going to keep going in the direction that we're working. This time we'll hold down the Shift key, and we will pull down rather than up and let go. So you can see as we're working, we're able to construct these curves from just handles and the anchor points. Let's do this one over here. This one will click, hold down that Shift key, move up, and let go. And then this last one, we will do exactly what we did over here. We will click, hold down our Shift key, drag downward, and there we go. So we have pretty much everything selected. We can see where we're going with this. We are going to straighten everything out, and we're going to go ahead and click at the bottom. But before we do, we'll do what we did earlier. We'll turn on Smart Guides under View. Got those selected. You can see it's checked now. You can also hit Command or Control U on your keyboard. Again, if you're working on a PC, it's Control U, and on the Mac, it's Command U. All right. So we'll hold down the Shift key, and when we do, we can see this thing called intersect. That's basically letting us know that we are aligned with our start point over here. So we will click, and then we'll close everything up. We can hold down the Shift key if we want to, but we don't need to because we're finishing everything off. We get the closed path little icon there next to our pen tool, and there we go. So there you have it. Pretty easy. We'll turn off this template layer for now, and you can see there's slight things that could be improved. This curve over here and in here where it joins at that anchor point. It's not exactly the smoothest coming into this downward curve, but for starting point, this is pretty good. So we got that. Let's move on to something a little more complex, I would say. We can start to see that we're getting a little more complex. Let's turn our template layer here at the bottom. And let's take a look at this. So we got a lot going on here. I think what we'll do is we will put down a few points and we'll break this video up into two parts. So let's start off here. Let's turn off our smart guides. And we will start at a place where we think might be best. I'm going to start down here in the lower right part of this flame artwork here, the template. Let's put a point here. And we'll come up here, and this isn't exactly horizontal, so we'll just follow what we see. We'll click and drag in the direction that we're drawing and try to line up this handle. So it's a little bit off. It's not quite at the 0 degrees. We will put this up here like that, and then we'll come down and follow this next one. Now this is practice. Obviously we won't have, when we're working on our own artwork, we won't have the ability to see in our template the pre-drawn handles here to guide us in the template layer. So we're going to click, and here's what we're going to do here. We're going to hold down our Option key after we've clicked, and we're going to drag out a handle. You can see this? It's a single handle that comes down. I'm holding down the Option or the Alt key on the PC, Option on the Mac, and I put down this single handle. So we don't see anything yet, but we'll continue on here. We'll click a point and then drag in the direction that we're drawing, line up to our template below. This one's going to be a little bit longer, you can see. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to drag down to this point here on the left. We're going to drag down, and we see already we have a little bit of an issue. So how do we resolve this? We can let go, and while we're still using the tool, we can go and hold down our Option or Alt key and drag this handle independently. So we'll continue on here. Here we have the same thing that we did down here. We're going to click and make a point. We can't see it here, but we'll put it right about here. And then we'll hold down our Option or Alt key, drag out that single handle again. And then we'll continue up the curve here. We have one that is symmetrical here largely. We'll come down here, set our point. So you can see you're just setting these points and dragging out the handles. Now this will start by putting it down here. And then what are we going to do now? We'll hold down our Option or Alt key. That'll give us access to the adjacent handle on the other side of this anchor point. And then we can continue drawing. So let's see, we'll put that down there at the bottom. We'll get it aligned. And then I'll hold down my Option key or Alt key and move it up. And you can see we're just continuing around here. We'll click, hold down the Option key, drag out a handle, come down here to this next one, drag out, we'll get to the shortest part there where the cursor is, Option key, that'll let us go back and fine tune, and then we will click and close everything down. So there we go. So that's looking pretty good. Let's turn off our template layer. That's pretty smooth all the way through. So I'm pretty happy with that result. What we'll do is we will continue on. We'll do the Superman logo next. That looks a little more straightforward. And then I'll show you a few more techniques to go in and create. We'll do this flame again, but I'll show you how we can do it another way. So we're moving right along here in Illustrator. We're working with the pen tool. I got it selected here from the tools panel. And we're looking at what we've done so far. We did some straightaways here. We did a curve, egg shape. We did this one. That was a little complex looking, but actually pretty easy. And then we ended up with this flame. Looks pretty good to me. Let's move on to our superhero logo here. So let's see, where can we start? Something that we're very familiar with. Where could we start with this one? Let's start by doing the straightaways. It seems pretty straightforward. No pun intended. We'll click and just set all our points. I'm not too worried about being exact here with it being perfectly symmetrical. There are ways to achieve that. In this video, we're just working with the pen tool. I'm going to zoom in and look at these handles that are set up in the template layer. Again, bottommost layer. We're working on the blank layer. I'm going to click on a corner. We'll start and we'll get these straightaways out of the way. So just like we did with the flame, we're going to click and then we're going to move down here. I'm going to show you a little trick here. So you think that I would go ahead and drag out a handle, which I could do, but I'm going to show you a really nice feature of Illustrator that's very helpful. So here we go. We're going to click, click, and close it up. Now what are we going to do with this curve here? Well, if you hover over the segment here, you will see as you hold down your Option key or Alt key, we get this curve here. So we're going to make this curve. The icon changes from the plus here. We don't want to add a point in here. We want to do another feature here of Illustrator. Hold down the Option key and you get this little curving maker tool. I'm sure it's got a technical name to it. I just call it the curvature tool or curve tool. I know there's a lot of different features here. I'm not 100% familiar with all of the names, but anyway, if you hold down the Option or Alt, it will turn into this and it'll allow you to affect the shape of that segment, that line or stroke segment. So pretty cool. Even gives you a little handle. So we could get rid of this handle and put it down there and then extend this one over and do all that, but I think we're on the right track here, so we'll move along. We'll come over here and get some of these easier areas out of the way. This looks pretty good. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to keep it horizontal. I'll just click down here and close it up. That was pretty simple. Let's move down to this one. We'll use that curve tool thing again. Let's just set up a triangle here. Hover over and hold down the Option key or the Alt key on the PC. And there we go. So we can adjust these. We can hold down that Option key and adjust these handles now if we want to a little bit more. Make that curve a little bit shallower. Let's do this one here. So here we're going to just follow what is already in place using techniques we've already learned. This looks largely symmetrical. Here we've got a short one here, a short handle here. Here's our anchor point. So what we will do is start out with the short, get that all lined up on the top, hold down our Option key, drag a little further, and there we go. So again, toggling that Option key allows you to drag the handles independently. Click, that's basically a corner, and we're going to affect this curve just like that. Looks pretty good. And we'll close it up there. And then we got one more, this one right here. So you can see how easy this is once you have learned how to use the corner points, the curves that are affected by Bezier handles, these handles. We can create Bezier curves. So here we go. This is pretty much straight away. Then we're going to get into this one. Again, I'm dragging in the direction that I'm going in. We'll pull this one over. I'm holding down the Option key, going back and independently adjusting, but being very careful. See, we don't have that seesaw action anymore, so we want to kind of keep things pretty decently horizontal there. This is a handle over here. We're not going to worry about that. That's not a point. We will click and drag up. Now, let me show you another little trick that you're going to like. While you have a point and you're working on it, you can hold down your space bar. If you hold down the space bar while you're working on a point, you have the handle or the point established. That space bar allows you to move the point around to wherever you want. So if you want to realign something while you're working on it, you can do that. Space bar gives you temporary access to moving that point. Almost done here. I'm going to drag the shorter side out first. Let's hold down the shift key, keep that pretty much horizontal. I'm now going to hold down my option key and pull that handle on the right over. And then I'm continuing down. So I guarantee you, well, I can't make any guarantees, but I'll let you know that if you have worked through these lessons very effectively and you start to master these tools, you can create anything with the pen tool. Very complex stuff. If you get through this Superman thing a couple times practicing, hold down the option key. Now I'm going in that direction. See, I made a corner. I guarantee you, you will learn very quickly. You'll pick this up and you'll be a pen tool master in no time. Let's see here. That looks pretty good. I'm liking how that looks. So the next video, I will show you how we can go back to this flame. I'll show you another technique where we can establish basically all of the anchor points first without handles in between. So let me show you real quick here. So you look at that, we have a lot of handles in between. We can try to create this flame with fewer handles. So let's see if we can do that in the next video. This is the final video in our Pen Tool Basics series. We have been working on a lot of stuff. We've come a long way. We did some straight lines here, also called paths or strokes. We did this chevron looking shape. We went around and worked with the horizontal vertical by holding down shift and the diagonal, getting us 45-degree angles. We did some curves here, the egg shape and this fun roller coaster looking thing. And now we're going to work on the flame. There's another way that we can create this flame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually delete this entirely. I'm going to turn on my template layer again, bottommost layer, but I'm going to make sure I'm working on that layer at the top called blank in this case. So let's grab our pen tool, and what we will do this time is we won't follow all of these certain anchor points that are established in the template showing us the handles. We're going to do another technique here. So let's click all the areas that we think need the anchor points. So let me give you a little helpful hint. If you're ever tracing over something and you don't have the anchor points established, a good way to think about this is what on this curve is the outermost edge of that curve. What's the highest point here? The outermost part of this curve, it could be somewhere in here, and it's probably right where they put the anchor point here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click there. We're not going to do anything yet. So we see this coming down here. We could even put this right here. We have the anchor point originally drawn here, but we could, following what I just said, we could just stick that there. We'll put this is the outermost edge over here, this part of the shape. You'll get accustomed to it. The innermost part, if we were walking across and we hit this, this would be the innermost part of this curve. It's an inside curve. We could put one here even. It's a lot farther away than this one, but let's do that. We'll put one here. That's a definite edge there. And then you can see up here, they have a curve established in this template here, or a anchor point established in this template right here. I'm going to put it right here, again following that principles of the outermost edge of this curve. The topmost edge. Let's put it right there. Down here, you can see this would be coming down like a roller coaster. The bottommost part of this hill would be here. And then we would come to this inner curve again. The innermost edge is here. So you can kind of see what we're doing here if we just follow things. We could put one here if you want. We might not have to use that one. Let's put one here now. That's a good part right there. It looks like it matches up pretty well, and then we'll close it off. So let's turn off that template for a second. Now that does not look like a flame at all. But using the keyboard commands that we've learned so far and handles, we can go ahead and create this. We're not following the original handles here that are already drawn. I'm going to show you how we can do this a little bit easier. So with the pen tool selected, we can hold down our Option key and go to this first point. This one was our first starting point down here in the lower right. If we hold down our Option key and drag in the direction that we were drawing, so that would be counterclockwise here, and get it just to the point where we can see it's starting to match up. I like what it looks like over on the right. This left edge is going to need some work. But if we come down here and we hold down our Option key and our Shift key as we start to drag, we're doing Shift because we're keeping this perfectly horizontal. You can see that we have a pretty close match. So to adjust this one up here, what do we do again? We hold down our Option key and drag out, and we can start to fine-tune these horizontal handles. So you see these were angled in the original template, but I'm using strictly horizontal and strictly vertical wherever possible. So we have a corner over here roughly. We're going to go ahead and adjust this one here and see how close we can get it. Okay. So that's pretty good, but I'm not real happy with what's going on down here, so we might have to adjust that. What can we do? We can select the point. We can move it around just by holding down the mouse and kind of realign things. So you're not always going to get the perfect handles here. I think we're going to have to adjust this one using another handle to affect this curve. So let's do that right now. I'm going to kind of reset this up here. I'm going to come over to this corner, and I'm actually going to turn on, under the View menu, Smart Guides. So this might help a little bit here. I'll show you why. So we're going to drag out. I'm going to hold down my Option key, and I'm going to pull this handle down. Doesn't have to be exactly on the handle that was established. There we go. And then I'm going to hold down my Command key to select the anchor point. Take this handle now and pull this right back to its point of origin, and it's going to snap. Because we're using Smart Guides, it's going to help us out, and it's going to snap back to the original. So that's pretty good. Okay, so let me turn off Smart Guides again and keep working around. I'm going to select this point. I'm holding down my Command key to temporarily select the Direct Selection tool. I'm going to move this up as close as I can to match this curve. You see a lot of tweaking. And then I'm going to work my way over to this point. So again, Option key. That's going to give me the anchor point tool temporarily. Drag in the direction of the drawing. And you can see things are starting to come together. Now this does have some odd little shapes in it and things, so you'll find that moving your points, it's perfectly normal. It's fine. You want to adjust things as you go. And again, we're doing things the way that it may not be perfect. We might have to adjust things, but I'm just showing you that we can put our anchor points really anywhere and then control it from there. So we're going to cheat this one. This one is no longer perfectly horizontal, but that's okay. We got kind of a different curve going on here. All right, I can lower this one down. Let me take this and move this point over a little bit. Yeah. So this one's a little more difficult. I'm going to reset it. To reset it, you can just click on the point again and it will reset things. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. See, this is the top part here. I'm going to put in another point. I'm going to move it up to here. So perhaps we needed another point in there to really establish this top part. That's helping out with that curve a little bit better. Yeah, it's looking a lot better actually. Let's move this over, tweak it. You can see small adjustments after you've set all your anchor points. You can make these fine-tuned little adjustments. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring this down like that. I'm going to bring this over, put it back in there. Let's do Command U, turn on the smart guides. It'll help us snap things back. Command U again, or Control U. So I know I'm doing a lot of things here, moving pretty quickly. But you can see if we just drag these handles that we establish, trying to keep them largely horizontal and vertical, we can get sometimes a better result. Let's see this one over here. That's looking pretty good. I like that. Could probably slide this over to the left a little. Bring that handle over. So as soon as you learn all of these quick shortcut keys, really it's the Command, Option, Shift, a lot of different combinations. You can move around something very quickly. So let's see, we're going to establish that one. Now we got two things buttoned up here. This is one good thing to point out. See how this point, or this point of the handle, is coming very close to this one. You never really want them to cross. You can bring them back in alignment, but we got a little bit of an issue here. The reason why it's not straightening out is because this handle here is much lower. So if we bring this up and we have the handles work together in smaller increments, we can get a much better result in that curve. That's a little bit better there. There we go. Almost done here. We can come up here. This is largely a corner. We can drag in the direction that we were moving. I can extend this handle a little bit more. Again, I'm holding down Option and Command along the way. And then I can come down here, drag in the direction, and then fine-tune things along the way. So the objective is to try to get these curves nice and smooth and natural looking. You don't want them to be bumpy at certain parts, because people can actually, the eye can pick that out and it becomes a visual anomaly. So let's take a look. Let's turn it off. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So that shows you in rather a longer video how we can establish our own points first and then drag out handles, and really how to use the top part or the outermost part of a curve to figure out where you want to put your anchor points, the innermost part of a curve, and that works all the way around. Those are the best places that will allow you to keep your anchor points, or your handles for your anchor points, largely horizontal or vertical. And with that, we have created all of our template objects here.